bit of retrospect, and we know that it's an appropriate thing to do to guide against this type of technology, because yeah, he's absolutely right. It does create all sorts of problems for kids. I'm not sure that that gets to the heart of the masculinity and feminine issue, but I totally agree with him that we should be safeguarding our children against this technology. It does seem to be very bad for them.
In this video, Andrew Wilson joins the panel on Piers Morgan Uncensored. Andrew Wilson and the panel discuss how society should address problems around children and access to internet pornography. With that, let's watch Andrew Wilson once again wreck a soy boy beta cuck.
With it. But for an adolescent, like these young kids, I'm seeing kids at dinners when we're at restaurant surfing TikTok while their parents are not even paying attention to what they're doing. Like that right there is a massive problem. And if we don't, as a society, get a hold of that, then this will never end. There will be more series like Adolescence that hit even harder because we're witnessing it in our own lives.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, you seem to be in agreement with some of that.
Yeah, it's poison. There's no doubt. It re-scrambles children's brains, and it's very difficult to monitor. Even if you have parental controls, they can find ways around it. At school, they have peers who will assist them in getting around it. You have to monitor it really well. Smartphone technology for my own kids, it was kind of new. I wish that I, in retrospect, had done more guarding against that myself. You don't know the dangers of that technology until children get a hold of it, and then you're left scrambling going, oh man, I wish I had known that this was going on or that was going on, but you have no idea. Now, though, we have a little bit of retrospect, and we know that it's an appropriate thing to do to guide against this type of technology, because yeah, he's absolutely right. It does create all sorts of problems for kids. I'm not sure that that gets to the heart of the masculinity and feminine issue, but I totally agree with him that we should be safeguarding our children against this technology. It does seem to be very bad for them.
And James, there is pretty well unfettered pornography on the internet available to young men and women, obviously, but men are watching a lot of often quite violent, degrading sexual scenes in these porn clips they're seeing online. None of that can help in the way an impressionable young male mind goes about trying to forge a real relationship with an actual woman.
Well, I think it's important not to say young male mind. It's any person's mind, right? Like, I don't think we should victimize men. I can't believe Andrew's agreeing with me. But yeah, it's awful. I mean, I genuinely don't think people should have phones until they're 16. They certainly shouldn't have social
Well, Australia's
media.
done that, and I'm not against it. The smartphone ban till 16.
I mean, it's terrifying.
Why not?
You can't go on air, on TV, and say whatever you want. Like, I know you're pretending that you're uncensored, but you couldn't sit here and say literally whatever you want.
Yes, I can.
Well, not really, Piers, because if you said something that incited hatred or racism or a terror attack,
I wouldn't want to say
be
that.
arrested.
I wouldn't
but online,
why would I want to incite
I'm
a
not
terror
saying
attack?
that you want.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to what they're saying. I agree with everyone so far. I'm not a parent, not that any of you asked, but I'd like to be one day. And thinking about what a child can intentionally or unintentionally stumble onto on the internet is one of the most terrifying things when I think about being a parent, because like they mentioned, it's very hard to monitor what they're doing. And even if you take every precaution as a parent, 99 out of 100 of their friends have a phone. And in some cases, the children are smarter than the parents about technology, and if they really want to see something, they're going to find a way. So it's scary. I always say about the internet, there's so many amazing things that the internet, the technology that's come with it, has provided to make people's lives easier, more efficient, able to do things in 1/100th of the time that it used to take. It's really quite remarkable. But with anything good, especially as great as the capabilities of the internet, awful comes with it. And all the issues between men and women and the red pill community and feminism, directly or indirectly, I think pornography is a big contributor to this divisiveness. But I think pornography in general is a big problem, and it contributes to a lot of the conflict between men and women and the perceptions that men and women have with one another, and people's inability to interact in a real world relationship when all they've done is gotten their jollies from, looking at a computer screen. So I don't have all the answers, but I think internet pornography is a real problem. And in the United States right now. And I wasn't aware of that ban on cell phones at 16 in Australia. I don't know if that's the answer because, again, it still seems that kids are smart enough to get around that stuff. But I understand where it's coming from. And like I said, I don't know if it's right for this country. I'd have to think about it. Anyway, let's get back to video.
I'm just trying to make a point. Online,
you're saying I can't say what I want.
Online,
I do not want to incite a terror attack.
But if you did,
I'm allowed. Just to be, you're raising an interesting point about censorship.
Yeah,
we're uncensored because I don't say anything I don't want to say.
Right.
So when you say I'm censoring, I'm actually self-censoring. I'm not. I'm not going to call for a terror attack.
I'm not saying that you would ever do that, of course, but I'm saying that if you did, there would be accountability for that because you are broadcasting to a lot of people.
Right.
But a lot of people online do not have that gate stopping them from saying horrendous things. And so therefore it can blow up online, excuse the horrible pun, and that shouldn't be allowed. There should be a system in place that stops people broadcasting things that aren't meant to be broadcast to millions of people.
One of the problems, Tommy, Toby Young, who's a British journalist, director of Free Speech Union, very, very big in promoting and defending free speech, says Adolescence, the new teen drama, is pro-censorship propaganda, partly paid for by the state. It is now being seized upon by Labour left-wing MPs as evidence we need more online censorship. And that is, of course, you talk about a swinging pendulum. What you don't want to come out of all this is an overreaction and an over-censorship, because that in itself becomes a problem.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with Sean on this point, too. I think parenting has more to do with this than any of us really, can even understand. I mean, many, I'm sure, in this panel can. But parenting is, to me, the end-all, be-all of all of this. I mean, you can watch horrible things online. You can listen to people say horrible things, but if you've got a good foundation with good parents at home, hopefully two, that provides you with a lot of guidance and support to navigate these things. And it doesn't really, scramble your mind in the way that those that are not blessed with a two-parent household may be impacted by it. I don't believe that censorship is ever the answer. I believe that more speech is the answer to speech that you don't like. And as much as I don't like certain people online and what they say, whether they're the Tate brothers or whoever else, I believe that they should have the right and the ability to say it. And then people like us should have the right and ability to respond to it. I think that's the healthiest way to come to a great consensus, or at least a public square where we can all debate ideas with dialogue and conversation. But I don't think that censorship is ever the answer. And I think that,
if you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
Our leaders in America have done a great job of emphasizing that, especially to the European countries who believe censorship is the way to cleanse or the way to legislate morality. I just don't think that's the way to do it.
Well, the instinctive reaction, certainly in the UK, for a long time now, many years, has been to censor and to ban and prohibit and so on. And I think people are beginning to wake up to the downside of that, is that once you give away, once you chip away at things like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, you're heading down a pretty slippery road, which can be dictated by your government. And then that's not a place.
It's interesting though, isn't it? I mean, I just want to make a side point, and I don't need to get into it, but like your government are banning books. So they are literally talking about free speech whilst also banning free speech in it that they don't agree with. So what you're saying is nice, and I agree with you in principle, but that's not literally what is happening.
It's not the same as banning books.
You talked about freedom of speech, right? And everyone coming together and having a discussion about it. But that's not what's happening.
This is something that irritates the hell out of me. Anytime someone from the right talks about being pro-free speech and anti-censorship, some left-wing idiot always has to say, it's the right who wants to ban books. I'll say this definitively. No one on the right wants to ban books. They are saying there are certain books that are not appropriate in an elementary school library that deals with issues of incest and grape and explaining sexuality to kids that aren't ready for that stuff yet. It's wildly inappropriate. That's not a book ban. That doesn't mean that you can't go to the library if you're a parent and get that awful book for your children. Now, if you want to do that, I hope the library takes down a note and has CPS sent to your house immediately because you're an insane person. But let's just be very clear. No one on the right is trying to ban books, so shut up. And ultimately, I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't want censorship on anything because, as I've always said, if you give the left an inch, they'll take a mile. So if the right ever capitulates and says, okay, this one thing is okay to be censored, and says, okay, it's okay to censor these one or two things, that will never be enough for the activists. Once you censor something, it opens the door for what about this? And what about this? And we should censor this. It will never be enough. And I am just not ready to go down that slippery slope. Last thing I'll say before we get back to the video, I'm not telling anyone watching this something you don't know, but all of this does start in the home. Not just the values that parents instill in their children or the dialogue that they have, which are crucially important in conveying to them the dangers of some of the things that in some of the decisions that are going to come up in their lives and try to guide them to make the right decision. So they talked about that ban on cell phones in Australia for children under 16. I don't even really want the government getting involved in that. The more I think about it, that's the parents' jobs as well to decide when their children are ready for that or anything else. And again, it won't solve the problem. I see 2-year-olds navigating iPads with ease and their parents barely know how to turn it on. So if kids want to get their hands on something bad enough, they will. Anyway, let's wrap up the video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Putting
we're talking
graphic
about in the
gay
home,
porn
not in
into
school.
children's libraries is a little different.
I mean, no
James.
one should be putting porn into a children's library. I think we all agree on that.
Then why are you complaining that that's being
Because that's
banned?
not what I'm discussing. I'm discussing books that talk about diversity, equality, that talk about Black Lives Matter, that talk about gay pride. Like this
Yeah,
is
so I don't have the same take as the rest of the panel when it comes to the idea of legislating morality. I think that there are ideas which are subversive and that we can get rid of, and that's absolutely fine to do. I don't think that we need to have unfettered access to pornography. I don't think that we need to have unfettered access to children being introduced to this type of sexuality so young. I don't think that that's necessary at all. I don't think it's an impingement on free speech at all. And not only that, there's going to necessarily be limits on every single freedom that we have. By necessity, that's the way it has to be, unfortunately. And the reason it has to be that way is because otherwise you're going to have nothing but subversives who go in and subvert your entire culture, which is exactly what happened in the UK, and it's exactly what's been happening in the United States. So we have to have some way to fight back against that.
All right, Sean.
Well, just state for the record, I do think pornography is one of the many tools that the nefarious forces in our country and in the world are using to try to destroy our society. But I just have to point out what that guy just said there. He's like, no one thinks there should be pornography in schools. Well, clearly he doesn't know what he's talking about, because that's the stuff that people on the right have an issue with. And again, they're not even saying they're not even asking for anyone to ban books. They're saying they shouldn't be in elementary schools and sometimes high schools because it's just not appropriate for kids of that age. And again, their parents can make the call. If they want their child to read that book for whatever insane reason, they can. It's a terrible idea, but they can. This guy's talking about banning books about diversity and Black Lives Matter. Well, he doesn't. Just literally doesn't know what he's talking about. But we want to hear from you. What do you all think about how pervasive, no pun intended, pornography is and how easily accessible it is for children? And what should be done about it, if anything? Or is it just another responsibilities that parents in this modern age will have to contend with? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.